One of the things I want you to do, since we're not having church tonight, I want you to take a few moments today and get all of your family together. If you can't do it today, do it tomorrow. But everybody in your family say, okay, we're going to have a powwow. And we're all going to sit down and we're going to list 5 ways that we can honor one another. And I don't mean that I'm going to write down 5 ways for all of my family, but for each member of my family, I'm going to write down 5 ways. 5 ways I can honor my wife, 5 ways I can honor my daughter, 5 ways I can honor my brother, anybody who's living in your household is what I'm saying. Okay, you get it? And then they're going to do the same thing. So it's going to take you about 15 or 20 minutes, and you're going to have that list. Post it on your refrigerator, on your sink. But remember that the first wall of Satan's attack is honor. Kev, you've been married 2 weeks. Have you dishonored your wife yet? Okay? Okay. If I ask you that question 2 weeks from now, what will the answer be? And 2 years from now. It better be just as strong, buddy. Actually, give him a push right there. So, man, we think this is one of those things where, we speak disrespectfully of our spouse. We use our spouse or our children. We let our children show disrespect to us. And folks, the family is a sacred unit. And the way we protect it is through honor. Now, the second wall of protection is faithfulness. We've got to be faithful. Deuteronomy 5:18, you shall not commit adultery. Now, there is a link between these walls, just as there is a link between these steps. The carpet from the floors continues right up the steps, over every edge and curve, right up to the main platform. It just continues. You can't make a clean break. Okay. You know why we are unfaithful to our families? Because we don't honor them. If you honor your husband or wife or your children, your parents, you will be faithful. It's tough. We start out and we have this great idea, as Kevin and Ashley do, that we're going to live happily ever after, and then along comes the temptation. And men, for you, basically the temptation is physical. We sort of separate this from love and honor and everything else, and that's a tough one. And for women, it's more likely it may be that it's emotional. You want to feel appreciated and loved, but for God, it doesn't matter. It's the problem is spiritual. Because God says once you make a promise to someone, then you have committed yourself to be faithful to that person. And the DNA of marriage is faithfulness. If you could examine marriage under a microscope or in a test tube, you would find that the thing that ties it all together is being faithful. And how many of us can tell our spouse, I have always been faithful to you? There's not many hands, if any, that can go up. And you know, I stand here and just in the quietness of this moment say, God, we have failed. But you know where we could make a difference? If we said to our families right now, our spouse, our children, our parents, I will be faithful to you from this point on. I'm committing myself, regardless of what I've done, I am committing myself to be faithful. Now, you can make that promise. And you can honor that promise. Young people, you can honor that promise by being faithful to your parents. If you tell them you're going to go somewhere, go there. If you're going to tell them you're going to go with someone, go with that someone. If you tell them you're going to be back at a certain time, be back at that time. That's what God expects you to do. That is honoring your family. That is being faithful. Parents, I'm going to put you on the spot. I do not do this. Don't embarrass your children. But if you have a child in high school in our youth group, and you think that your child is sexually pure, stand. Don't do it now, but stand. And all these kids are thinking, oh my God, is my mom and dad, are they standing? You see, what you think about your children has nothing to do with what your children are doing. You may think your child is the most faithful kid in the world, and that may not be true. 50% of the children who will graduate from high school this year are sexually active. Do you really think they understand what it means to be faithful to God and to the family? Young people, you may disagree with me, and there may be those who tell you that this is no big deal. You won't get a sexual disease. You won't get pregnant. You're going to be careful. You love this person. That is baloney. This is the Word of God. And God says, you shall not be sexually active before marriage. And before you older people say, boy, preacher, you really gave it to those high school kids. You check the statistics. 97% of the people in this church, I'm using us as an average cross-cut of America, 97% of American adults have been sexually involved outside of marriage. God forgive us. 97%? Did I hear the preacher right? You did. Oh, wow. I mean, that includes deacons and pastors and ministers of music and parents of our young people. We are living in violation of God's great commandment that allows Satan to just not climb the wall, but we open the door to Satan. The only way that we're going to tackle and win the war against adultery is to win the battle against premarital sex. Start right there with our young people. Let them know that it is a big deal whether or not they remain sexually pure. And then we who are adults receive God's forgiveness and make a pledge that to the best of our ability, we will remain faithful for the remainder of our earthly lives. Now that's doable. I think I might have said 97% a moment ago. I think the actual number is 95%. You know, it doesn't matter what behavior trends we face. God's commands have been cast in stone. There is no give and take on this one. There is no what if on this one. There is simply the absolute Word of God, accompanied by these instructions. Forgive your spouse if your spouse has failed you. Forgive yourself if you have failed God. Receive God's forgiveness. Live like someone who has been forgiven. And commit yourself to sexual purity for the rest of your life, which means only within marriage. Now we're at the third wall, third protective wall. And if the first two have been breached, then the third one is going to fall quite easily. The third wall is contentment.